this is Dodie, and I'm here to show you my completed Caramelle journal. Caramelle was designed by the paper Cameo, and Nicola did an amazing job. I love the autumn colors in this one, and I was ready to make an autumn journal, and I'm officially designating this as my first autumn journal. It's a little bit different than some of my other journals in that I have made an accordion journal, and yes, I have made a cover to put it in, but it's more like a protective cover. So let's open it up and just see how this journal works. When you open it up, I did have a little pocket here because I made an extra little writing journal to go in the bigger journal, but I had so much stuff in there I couldn't quite get it in, so I did make a little lace belly band, and this is the cover, and it just opens up like this, and it has a faux closure which has some really pretty golden sari silk, but I'm going to put that to the side. And I'm going to bring Caramelle back, and I have her starting on this first page where you can see I have indicated that it is indeed a journal. Caramelle has many pretty old cabinet card photographs, and I love cabinet card photographs. I especially love nowadays in this age of AI. I still love real people, like actual cabinet cards, not AI generated images. I just am partial to the real ones. I love some of the really super pretty AI ones too, but my whole purpose in junk journaling is to sort of memorialize people who are no longer here. And even though I don't know this woman's name, she's going to be forever in this journal, and we can think up what her life might have been like, how old she was when this picture was taken. So this journal is constructed in an accordion journal style. When you first open it, I love this envelope so much. To increase the durability of this envelope, I did Mod Podge the outside of the envelope, and then I printed it double-sided. And here is a one of the embellishments that comes in Caramelle. It's a button. I made it into this giant paper clip. But when you open up the envelope, I did put in a little piece of vintage ledger paper. And of course, I used this music paper from Caramelle that can easily be used to write on. And then it just, you can close it back up with the giant paper clip just to keep it shut. Here's some handmade paper that I clipped up here with a specimen pin, and then right behind it I put this vintage piece of a book page from the Pilgrim's Progress and one of Caramelle's really beautiful tags. Flipping again, this kit is full of these photographs, and as I've just stated, I love to honor old photographs by putting them in journals so that these people are sort of remembered, even if we are anonymously, we don't even know who they are. But in this case, I made this a fold out pocket, and then I have been taking lately all the old book pages that I have from old books that are kind of really ratty. I've been gluing them together and making tags out of the glued together pages. I did cut this leaf from one of Caramelle's sheets. I love the leaves in this kit. And then I have also created a giant paper clip from one of the papers of Caramelle. Has this beautiful Netherlands stamp. I adore that stamp. I've used it throughout this journal several times. I've used all Caramelle with the exception of a very few things. Some of the things that I've taken that are outside of Caramelle and some of Nicola's other kits are the little little tabs and tags. And I'm not going to list all the different kits these come from. If you want to know, message me and I will list which kit these all come from. But I've stuffed this antique glassine bag with some vintage ephemera. I have tried to include vintage ephemera throughout this journal. Here I have made an interior writing journal, and here we have a journal card that comes with the kit. I've embellished it all the way around with lace, and when I ran out of this lace, I just used this lace, and I love the effect. And this is something you can also write on. I consider all my journals, even though they're not pure paper, to be writing journals. And this, I'm going to put this back in this way. This tag is a good example of that very thing. Here's another piece of vintage rag paper. I have made a little tuck spot, and this I do know comes from the Botanical Labels kit. Here I made a really pretty, from my leftovers of the sari silk I used to make my tie for the cover. I just crumpled this all up and turned them into this really pretty little flower using leftover lace and the leftover sari silk and an old button. But throughout this journal, I cut up this very, very fragile invoice and made it into 4 separate pages that can be written on. This is old music. Here is another tuck spot where I have taken, this is also from the Botanical Labels kit, but I did take paper from Caramelle and a tag from Caramelle. I did cut off the top just so that I could fit it into this tuck spot that I've created right here. And with a lot of my used cast-off papers from Caramelle, I did collage quite a few journal cards to use. Now, this, I love Nicola's hearts a whole bunch. This heart, I took one of her hearts and I collaged using Caramelle. This is from one of her other kits, but I did make this stuffed heart, and I stuffed it with tags from one of Nicola's tag kits. And this is an example of the pressed together book pages. I just glue about 10 pages together, and then they become stiff enough to cut into a tag. I think I'm going to do a tutorial on that, ways to use up book pages from old books that you tear apart. And then I've stuffed in these wonderful tags and this tag that I made. And I put that stuffed heart right there. I made this pocket out of the box that comes in the Caramelle kit. I love Nicola's boxes, but I especially loved this one and just turned it into a pocket. Now this spread right here, here's another one of the tags made from books, pages all pressed together. It opens up, and I've included this card. I made a journaling card out of one of the papers, printed on cardstock, and printed, I did line it with paper from one of the other Caramelle papers, and it just fits in that pocket there. This is a vintage envelope that just really went well with all the Caramelle colors. I do intend to put something in there, but I really have, I'm almost completely done, but I do need to stuff that still. I made this little triptych of Caramelle images. I just love the way this turned out. Here's another one of the pictures, some more of the pictures. They all have names on them. And then I just stuffed it into this little lace tuck spot, which came from just a very small piece of leftover lace. This is one of my favorite images from Caramelle. She was, I believe, the Princess of Wales, or she's a princess of some, yeah, Princess Victoria. She is just a really, really beautiful ex-royal, and I made this wonderful giant card that can be used for writing, and I embellished it with sari silk and some netting and crinkle ribbon and a cherry blossom, and I've just stuck it in here. This wax seal does come from one of my favorite Etsy stores. I will link her below. And then you come to the next part of the accordion. Here is an envelope that I made, and I'm going to give Sam Poole credit for the design of this envelope. I love this shape so much. I cut it out. In her most recent kit, I cut out the shape of this envelope in some of Nicola's papers, and I did stuff it with some vintage paper. I've got a little wax seal here that I made, and I just put it in this little net pocket, and I have this really lovely handmade envelope. Oh, I adore this. I put a tiny little mulberry paper rose, and it is also stuffed with just a tiny bit of old book page, and I just stuck it in that pocket. Here is a bezel that I made using that stamp that I love. It's actually, I cut it out of this stamp here, put it into one of these brass bezels, and then I Mod Podged over it. There's also this tuck spot right here that I haven't put anything in. I think I'm just going to leave it like that. And then this is my favorite thing, this is one of my happy things, accidents that just sort of happen. I had a bunch of leftover sari silk. I sort of rumpled it up and then sewed it in the middle of my sewing machine, and it came out in this wonderful flattened rose shape. I added some green ribbon for leaves. I just love the way that pocket turned out. And then tucked in there is another image from Caramelle, decorated with sari silk and a little mulberry rose, and covered in Caramelle paper that is some of my favorite paper. And then behind the little picture, I have constructed this pocket. I'm giving my dear friend Gail from Shabby Cottage Studio full credit for glitter Twisty tabs. Oh, I saw those in her recent video and thought, I have got to make these, and I did. And I made this wonderful piece of paper, comes as a contrast within this Caramelle kit. This striking aqua is just the perfect contrast to all the browns and autumn pinks. And inside this, I made another little writing journal, and it is full of vintage blank paper for the most part. This is new paper, but for the most part, it's either coffee dyed paper or vintage paper, and it just would make a wonderful place to secretly record one's thoughts. And it goes back into that envelope like that, and that twisty goes like that, and then there's a pocket behind this lace pocket where it fits very nicely, and it just adds a nice pop to that page. Here's a little pocket I made with one of the photos from Caramelle, and I covered her in broken pieces of mica. This is how I use up my mica. I like to cover things so it looks like cracked glass, and in it I have another couple of tags that I made from the kit, and they just fit down there in that pocket like that. Some journaling cards. Now this page is covered in this lovely piece of lace, and I have applied Velcro at the bottom so it doesn't flop around. And you open it up, and here's another one of my book page journal cards that I made by flattening a bunch of book pages together. I sewed around the edges. I covered it in the remnants of some of the Caramelle paper and cut out the leaf from Caramelle. Here's one of the papers with the leaf still on it, and I Just love those leaves. They make great fussy cuts. And they look like real leaves, so you don't have to go out and get a real leaf. Here is another journal card. Another one of these wax seals from one of my favorite Etsy shops that I'm going to put below. I think it's Memento Mori. I love her shop so much. Her name is Alice, and she's absolutely delightful. I covered it once again in the back is once again covered in Caramelle paper. This is also from my favorite Etsy shop. She makes handmade papers, and I just had to insert that because the colors went so well. And just a little piece of vintage book page, which I love, that sacred poetry. And then here's another series of flip outs, an old envelope. I don't know what the year is, but it is old, and it came from Asia. It's the Asia Life Institute, which I find really fascinating. The stamp colors are beautiful. I did put one of my little violet stickers, and here is another collaged journaling card that I made using my leftovers from Caramelle papers. And here is another flip out. Now this comes from Cimarron, her last year's fall kit. And what I did with this is, it's falling apart a little. I made this picture, I covered it and backed it with coffee dyed paper, made a little pocket, and then I have put in some vintage rag paper and just a tiny little note writing pad. And I've clipped it up here. And then here's this pocket with yet another collaged tag that I've made and decorated with the crinkle ribbon at the top. And then you get back to the very beginning and we'll bring out our cover, and it just keeps it safe from harm. The cover acts just as a protector like covers are supposed to. I'm not going to tie it super tight because I don't want my ribbon, I always worry Sorry Silk is going to tear. So there we go. I hope you enjoyed that, everybody. This is a lovely, lovely kit from Nicola. And my goal in making this was to stick with that kit almost in totality. I only used a few pieces from some of her other kits. And like I said, if you want to know specifically where any of the little tabs came from, just ask me and I will figure out which kit they came from. Thanks everybody for watching. Thank you so much, as always, for your friendship. I hope you're all having a wonderful Sunday. Take care. Bye.